Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Ellen Gray, a features reporter at the Inquirer. Thank you for joining us for Inquirer Live, where our guest today is CNN anchor Jake Tapper, author of The Devil May Dance. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Anytime during the discussion, you may submit questions for our guest. Please ask them in the comment section at the bottom of this page. If you're watching us on social platforms like Facebook or Twitter, please join us at inquirer.com/Jake Tapper Live to submit any questions. We'll take as many at the end as time allows. Jake Tapper, CNN's lead Washington anchor, is also the anchor of the 2-hour weekday program The Lead and co-anchor of the network's Sunday show State of the Union. Somehow he's found time to write books, including his nonfiction bestseller, The Outpost, which was made into a movie that was released last year. His latest book, a novel called The Devil May Dance, came out last month and is a New York Times bestseller. Set in the Rat Pack era of early 1960s Hollywood, it's the sequel to Tapper's 2018 novel, The Hellfire Club, which HBO Max is developing as a TV series. Both books feature a Republican congressman named Charlie Martyr and his zoologist wife, Margaret, who this time around are hanging out with Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, and JFK's brother-in-law, Peter Lawford, while Sinatra films Manchurian Candidate. Jake, as many Philadelphians know, is one of us. He's the son of a pediatrician and a nurse, and he grew up in Queen Village. He attended the Philadelphia School, Akiba Hebrew Academy, now known as Barak Hebrew Academy, and Dartmouth. And before he was known for TV news, or had even started high school, he was drawing cartoons for the Old South Street Star. Later, he drew some cartoons for the Inquirer as well. He lives in Washington with his wife and their daughter and son, but as his Twitter followers know, he's a major Philly sports fan. I'm so happy to welcome Jake Tapper to Inquirer Live.
Thanks, Ellen. Thank you so much, everybody. And just because I want people to know that, where is it? That is a Foles and Wentz autographed football from the Super Bowl, and that is a Foles autographed Eagles helmet. So just because I know people are going to wonder what it is. So that's what that is.
You're not bragging or anything.
I'm bragging a little bit. I mean, it's not, they didn't give them to me personally because they love me. It was, these were gifts.
Still, it's a nice gift.
Yeah.
So you established this very interesting couple, Charlie and Margaret, in the Hellfire Club, and that took place in 1954 during the McCarthy era. Now you've jumped all the way to 1962. You've moved the story to the West Coast. How did that happen? Why did you decide to do that?
It was really simple, actually. When I was doing promotion for the Hellfire Club back in 2018, and people were buying it, and so I realized, hey, maybe I can write another one. Right around that time, I heard this amazing true story that after helping to get Senator John F. Kennedy elected president in 1960, Frank Sinatra expected that Kennedy, as president, would come and stay with him during a California swing. Not such a strange conclusion. Sinatra and the Rat Pack had worked their hearts out to elect Kennedy. It was a very close election. Kennedy's brother-in-law, Peter Lawford, as you noted, was part of the Rat Pack. And Kennedy had stayed with Sinatra once before as a candidate in 1960. So Sinatra started having all this work done to his Rancho Mirage estate. He had extra rooms built and phone lines installed. He had a helipad constructed.
Yes.
And then, so again, this is true. Again, this is all real. And then around that time, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, the president's brother, who was going after organized crime figures and had been for quite some time, even when he was a Senate staffer, he was asked, how can your brother be friends with Sinatra, who is legitimately friends with all these mobsters, or at least it looks that way, while you're going after organized crime? So Attorney General Kennedy had a choice to make. Do I let my brother stay in a bed where mobsters have slept, or do I run the risk of alienating one of the biggest stars in the world who helped my brother get elected? And that's the true story. And I heard that story just around that time, and I thought, I mean, I've been a fan of Sinatra and an amateur historian, knowing a little bit about the Kennedys for some time, but I'd never heard this story. Amazingly, I don't know how it escaped me, but I thought, what a great story to thrust Charlie and Margaret into. We'll have Attorney General Kennedy get them out there to investigate, and then I can have fun as a writer, exploring the world of the Rat Pack and the like.
Well, it sounds like you didn't necessarily see this as a series when you wrote the first book.
I thought potentially it could be, but I'm not arrogant enough to think, here's my first book. I mean, I was lucky enough to get it published, and then I wasn't like, and here are the next 10. I mean, I thought, I mean, I kind of fell in love with Charlie and Margaret as characters, and thought it would be fun to, have them explore other arenas. And then when we started talking about doing a Hellfire Club TV show, the idea was always, if a streaming service picked it up, and right now we're kind of like figuring out where to go and all that. But they are characters that could, you could do season 1, 1954, season 2, 1980, season 3.
Oh, really?
40. Yeah, you could just move them around and have them explore. I mean, one of the thoughts I always had about if it were a streaming service is you could give, in the way that Fargo does different eras and different characters each season. You could have, for instance, there's a character in both books named Isaiah Street. He's a black congressman from Chicago, fictitious, and he's a Tuskegee Airman. I mean, you could theoretically, season 2, season 3 of such a show, you could give Isaiah Street to a showrunner and say, have Isaiah be, give me an Isaiah Street season that takes place while he's a Tuskegee Airman in that world. And but I mean, the characters and using the characters to explore the eras was a possibility. But I never thought, like, until people started buying the book, I never started thinking that way.
I mean, Isaiah is a really interesting character, and he, as you say, he's fictitious. He's one of 2 black members of Congress at the time.
The other one's real.
It was only one, and it was Adam Clayton Powell.
Right.
You see.
And in the first book, Hellfire Club, I talk a little bit about the differences between Adam Clayton Powell and Isaiah Street, because then, and also now, although to a lesser extent, how a black public figure carried himself in an era where racism and discrimination were overt and all over the place. I mean, the Hellfire Club takes place right before Brown versus the Board of Education decision. You had to talk about these things, and you had to figure out, how were you going to carry yourself? Were you going to be an Adam Clayton Powell? Were you going to be a Jackie Robinson? I mean, how were you going to deal with the fact that America at that time, racism was so accepted?
Well, you do as much research for your fiction as you do for your nonfiction, from what I can see. I mean, the bibliography for The Devil May Dance goes on for several pages. Are there things you discovered while researching the early 60s that became unexpected plot points in the book?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. A lot. I mean, in fact, one of the ways that I would kind of like solve writers' problems would be to dive into the newspapers of the era, newspapers.com or newspaperarchives.com. I subscribe to both those.
I love those archives.
Yeah, they're incredible. I mean, just to see, just an example is to this having nothing to do with my book, but I read for Memorial Day, I had read that there was this history professor at Yale who found, like, in his view, the first incident of Memorial Day, which was in 1965. It was right after the Civil War had ended, and it was all these emancipated slaves doing. Anyway, but long story short, you go into newspapers.com, you find the New York Herald story about that he's basing his historical research on, and you can just see it in its context of the newspaper. It's just incredible. Anyway, there were times that that I didn't know how to resolve a writer's issue, or I wanted to put scenes in interesting places. I wanted to have as many of these scenes take place in like cool places. And I would just like go and see what's going on. Like, for instance, there's a very minor scene, but it takes place at the opening of the Dodgers park, which happened right then. And then when I was thinking about how to end the book, and I knew what I wanted to happen, but I didn't know how and where. And I was thinking to myself, so remember the book takes place the first scene is in January 1962, back up a month to December 1961, and then it just goes forward from there. And all the stuff, most of the stuff was taking place there. The filming of The Manchurian Candidate, the snow in Los Angeles, all that stuff was really going on. But I didn't know how to end it. And then I'm like, well, what happened in like April and May of 1962? Because that's when the book would end. Charlie and Margaret have resolved the issue. The mysteries are done. The bad guys have been whatever. I don't want to spoil it. And so how do I end this? Because I have all these competing characters. I have the mobsters, and I have the Kennedys, and I have the Rat Pack. What happened in May? I have the Manchurian Candidate and the filming of that. What happened in April or May of 1962? And I just went online and, oh my God, Marilyn Monroe singing Happy Birthday to John F. Kennedy at Madison Square Garden at his fundraiser for his birthday party happened then. Serendipity. So I knew there was, I had known about that, but I didn't know as much about that event as I learned to write the book. Like, I didn't know that Sinatra notably was not there. I didn't know that afterwards they went to the house of Arthur Krim, who was the head of United Artists, which was making the Manchurian Candidate. And that's the only place you can find a photograph of John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Marilyn Monroe, is at Arthur Krim's house. So, it was just like, reality is always much more fascinating than fiction writers can concoct.
I know. And I think your books are the kind where you're Googling it to say, did that really happen? And the weirder stuff is always the stuff that happened.
Totally. 100%. Not all of it. That scene in Disneyland is fictitious, but, but a lot of the weirdest stuff is real. And the same thing in the Hellfire Club too. A lot of the stuff was real. And I did do a lot of research, and the reason I have just so people can see, this is the book, and like there's at the very end of the book, and I did this in the Hellfire Club too, I have a note on sources and acknowledgments, and I just go into the books I read to prepare and other sources and other things that happen, so that people like you and me who are, who read a book or watch a TV show based on history and think, is that real? Like, did that really happen? And go to Google or Wikipedia or whatever, have a place to start. And for instance, there's this Scientology subplot, because the Church of Scientology was starting in the 1950s. And there's a memo, and this doesn't spoil anything, but there's a memo of Scientologists, the church, wanting to recruit celebrities for the church to give it higher profile. And that's based on a real memo. And obviously the Scientology has followed that template and recruited a lot of very high profile celebrities.
You also explain at the end the name of the book, which you probably could, to save people from Googling. So this is the name of the book.
The book is The Devil May Dance, and it is, you find out early on in the book that is the name of a Sinatra song for which he is nominated for an Academy Award from the movie El Cid, and which he performs in the book in a very climactic scene. It is not a real song. I wrote it. I didn't write the music. I wrote the lyrics. The song is about what the book is about, which is what happens to you when you dance with the devil. What happens to you when you make a deal with somebody who is of lower ethical and moral standards, whether it's the Kennedy campaign with the Rat Pack, or Sinatra with the mob, or Charlie, the main character, one of the main characters with the Rat Pack. What happens to him? Like, that's what it's about. But the reason I'm smiling is because in previous books I've written, both The Outpost, in which there's a scene which the soldiers are riding in Afghanistan and listening to AC/DC, and then towards the end of the after the big attack, they're singing Johnny Cash. And those are real stories. But for that, and also for the Hellfire Club, I was told by the lawyers who review the transcript before it goes to the publisher, you can't really quote more than one line of a song unless you get express permission, because you will get sued for copyright violations. And so, I mean, I just think it's the stupidest thing in the world. And but whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter what I think about it. That's what publishers will tell you. And you can always get permission. A friend of mine used to be an ABC News producer, and he did this incredible primetime special about soldiers, and they got permission from Dire Straits to use the song Brothers in Arms. You can get permission, but you need to get it. Anyway, I knew the Sinatra estate was not going to give me permission for anything. So I wrote the song, but the lawyers called me up and said, Tapper, what are you doing? You know by now you can't quote more than a line of a song, and yet you have several songs in here, including an entire Sinatra song. And I said, it's not real. It's not a real song. And then my editor said, you need to put that in the source notes at the end, because people are going to go crazy trying to find the song. There are two other fake ones. There's a little moment in a radio when Charlie and Peter Lawford are driving. That's a fake song. They turn on the radio. There's a Sinatra song. It's not real. And then the scene at Disneyland when when Peter Lawford and Sammy Davis Jr. are singing a song about like a gaggy kind of silly song about the Cuban Revolution. That's also made up too.
So nobody should look for the lost Sinatra song.
I mean, yeah, I've listened to enough Sinatra songs to have an idea of what sounded Sinatra-y enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, Charlie's a World War II veteran, which comes up a lot in both books. It's one reason he's rubbing elbows with Sinatra in this book, and because he's an advisor on the Manchurian Candidate. You're active in veterans' causes, including Homes for Our Troops. Did that spring from working on The Outpost, or does it go back maybe to your mother's work with the VA?
I don't know. I mean, these are replicas of, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a ship from my grandfather. He fought in World War II, and a plane from my great uncle who was killed in World War II. So I knew of service, although my grandfather didn't talk about it. My mom worked on the VA, I think covering the McCain campaign in 1999 and 2000, and seeing all those Vietnam veterans coming out and being grateful for positive recognition for their service in Vietnam. Perhaps they felt like for the first time ever. And then doing The Outpost, I think it all contributed to this sense of I need to be doing more from my perch, because I've had this very privileged existence, and these young men and women have sacrificed so much. Some of them, by the way, come from privilege. Some of the most incredible people I've met came from very similar lives to I did, but they just had the selflessness to volunteer. But in any case, just to bring attention to it. And then Charlie, I mean, having Charlie be a World War II veteran allowed me to tell some fictitious World War II stories and some real World War II stories.
He also has PTSD. He has PTSD before they've identified really PTSD as a thing. Yeah,
shell shock or battle fatigue, they call it at the time. He's self-medicating at this point. So it's 1962. So he's 41. He'll turn 42 in December. And because remember, Pearl Harbor Day is his birthday. So yeah, it's just also just a way to get at that era, because so many of the people in that era were World War II veterans. I mean, President Eisenhower helped win the war. Nixon served in World War II. Kennedy was a World War II hero. You know, I mean, so many of them were. It just enabled also me to do more research about World War II. Like the French village that Charlie has this memory of, this very dark memory. that was a real situation, that French town that was Nazi occupied, that the Allies just utterly destroyed. That was a real incident.
Well, you talk about Charlie self-medicating. The amount of drinking that goes on in this book in the Hellfire Club is reminiscent of Mad Men. I mean, Charlie.
I think they're both just reminiscent of the 50s and 60s.
Well, that's the thing, is Charlie may realize he's developed a problem, but do you think a lot of Americans were at least a little bit drunk most of the time in the 50s and 60s?
Sure seems that way, right? And then when the 3 martini lunch, when they took away the tax exemption for that, when was that? Like the 80s or something? I mean, it was really,
yeah.
So they took away the tax exemption for the 3 martini lunch, or there was some debate about this. I'm going by memory here, so fact checkers give me a break. But the very discussion of a 3 martini lunch. Have you ever had 3 martinis?
If I have a glass of wine at lunch, I need a nap afterwards, so I can't drink at lunch.
I've had 3 martinis before. That's a lot of martinis. So, I mean, the idea that this was like a business event and you were having 3 martinis. So it just seemed to me like, boy, people were really smoking and drinking a lot back then. And this is both in the Hellfire Club and in the Devil May Dance. And then, of course, Charlie at the beginning of the book is self-medicating. He's drinking too much. He has these horrible post-traumatic stress memories and such. What's the worst place you could stick him is in the middle of the Rat Pack, where they're drunk all the time anyway. So, yeah, I mean, it just seemed to me like that would be, well, you know, it's funny. I don't know how it happened organically, but there was definitely a lot of smoking and drinking in the Hellfire Club. And that was definitely pointed out to me by people. And I'm like, people smoked and drank a lot back then. And then when I decided to do this, it just kind of made sense that, well, at some point drinking has got to become a problem for somebody.
Right. Yeah. So would it be harder for you to set a political thriller in the present day?
I think so. For me, it would. Yeah. There are a couple of reasons why. One is I really love writing about a world where there is no internet and no smartphones, because so much good drama that I was raised on, if it took place today, every scene you would be saying, well, why didn't he just Google her?
Yeah.
Or why didn't he? Well, and now that you know, think about it now when you as a viewer, and think about like how many scenes writers now put in the middle of a desert so that there is no cell service. That now happens all the time on TV shows. People are in contemporary drama. People are always somewhere where there's no cell service or their phone died. Like, because that's a problem you have to solve. So I like that. I also like, it's much more fun for me to write about today's world by looking at echoes, or I guess we're the echo today, but looking at previous events that are similar, whether it's, you know, a lot of the stuff in The Devil May Dance is about women in Hollywood, and a lot of this, you know, subtext or text. And that I think what's kind of upsetting about it maybe, or notable, is how little has changed. Yes,
it's hard not to, you read this and it's hard not to think of Epstein.
Right, right, of course. And well, also one of the things when you go back and read about that era is that how many grown men were openly with minors, teenage girls, openly. Janet Leigh is a character in the book, and her husband, Tony Curtis, has just left her in real life for his 17-year-old co-star. And you have Elvis at this point has Priscilla Presley, or whatever her name was before she got married. She was, I guess when he met her, she was 14. And he kind of like just squired her away in a room till she turned 18. And like Charlie Chaplin and Errol Flynn. And it's just like one after the other, grown men openly cavorting with 15, 16, 17-year-old girls, and everyone being like, ha, 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 ha. So, I mean, it was kind of just out in the open back then.
Yeah, but as you say, now I mean, Margaret seems to be a bit of a conscience.
Yes, she's the conscience of the book. I mean,
like,
in both books, she's the strongest character in the book. She's really the hero of both books, I think.
I think so too. But well, you've been vocal about the January 6th insurrection and insisting that it not be minimized or forgotten. In the Hellfire Club, you placed Charlie at the scene of the 1954 attack.
Yeah,
Puerto Rican nationalists, and I think you got one more person shot than was actually shot.
That's right. But I named the actual congressman who got shot. I mentioned, and then I have a fictitious congressman who gets killed, but nobody actually was killed that day in the Puerto Rican attack.
But it's still kind of a horrific thing that I don't remember learning about in school.
No, me neither.
And so, how confident are you that the events of January 6th will make it into the curriculum in the future?
I'm not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, not at all. I mean, history is written by the winners. I mean, who's going to win this fight that we are in right now to preserve the democracy of the United States? I mean, I don't want to sound histrionic about this, but when you have Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney essentially sacrificing her professional career, I mean, that's what she's doing. She could have kept her mouth shut and she would still be House Republican Conference chair and would have had a very good chance of becoming the first female Republican Speaker of the House, or maybe even the first woman president. I don't know. But she has risked all of that to say this was an insurrection, this was a lie, this was, fed by the president and people others who should have known better. And they are going to try again, is what she's clearly saying, clearly warning us about. They're going to try again, and they might be better situated next time. So, I mean, when you have people on right-wing television claiming this wasn't an insurrection, and when you have, the Senate Intelligence Committee report that came out today.
Oh, doesn't use the word insurrection.
Doesn't use the word insurrection so that they could get everybody unanimously to sign off on it. And they couldn't get unanimity just on the word insurrection, unless it's in quotes, unless they're quoting somebody, but like just as an assertion. I mean, it's very clear. We all saw what happened. Months and months of lies by President Trump and his allies, including the current House Republican leaders, McCarthy, Scalise, and Stefanik, but also other people like Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, lots of people on Fox, lying about the election, lying about the integrity of the election, lying about what happened in Philly, where Trump actually did better in 2020 than he did in 2016. And fed lies. Millions of people believe the lies now. And thousands of them went to the Capitol, prompted by Trump, to, I mean, you'd have to get in the brain of each one of them, but clearly the intention was to have the people on Capitol Hill, Vice President Pence, people in the House, people in the Senate, overturn the election, send it back to the states. There's no mechanism for this. It's just all made up, just like this idea that Trump's going to be reinstated in August. It's all crazy nonsense, but that's what they were doing. Obviously, they weren't doing lobbying. They weren't handing out leaflets. They were destroying things and scaring people. People died. Many of them were beating police. I don't know what you would call it other than a violent attempt to reverse the course of an election, which is an insurrection. So how confident am I that we're going to hear about this? I don't know. Like I said, history's written by the winners. I don't know what we're going to learn. How come I never learned? I went to a very progressive grade school, the Philadelphia school at 25th and Lombard. I never heard about the Tulsa racist massacre. I never heard about it. I don't blame that on TPS. I had wonderful teachers, and I'm sure the best intended curriculum and everything like that, but it just wasn't part of the American educational discussion. So yeah. I hope our kids learn about January 6th.
Well, aren't also the events that are happening right now are another reason why it would be hard to write a political thriller right now? Because, Alan Drury doing advise and consent seems so mild.
Yeah. That's a third point, which is everything is so over the top right now that you couldn't write it if you brought it to a writer's room they would laugh you out for being too on the nose. Like,
Yeah.
okay, come on. The president is going to incite a violent insurrection on the Capitol, and people are going to die. And people are actually going to be these insurrectionists are going to be beating policemen with American flags. Come on. Like, if you wrote that, people would be like, don't you think that's a little heavy-handed? So that's one. And also, something like this current reality, this current political reality we're in, and medical reality, although less and less because of the vaccines, is depressing. It's depressing. And that's my day job. My day job is sharing that depressing news, the reality of that we live in. And these books, these fictional books, are an escape for me when I write them, and hopefully an escape for readers when they read them.
It could be an argument for a 3-martini lunch if you look at it.
Yeah, they definitely are. Well, I'm not getting away with the drinking. The next book will be in the 70s. They're still drinking in the 70s.
Yeah, but weed came in a big way mainstream. And I think it changed the way people behave.
If you're suggesting that I introduce marijuana into the book, and for the third book, I'm all ears.
I think you should. Well, way back.
I'm imagining Charlie and Margaret doing it. Remember, they have 2 kids who will be in the 70s in their late teens, early 20s, Lucy and Dwight. So Lucy and Dwight's nickname presumably would be Ike. Lucy and Ike being smart, intelligent, unencumbered young adults in the late 70s, with Charlie and Margaret there too, that might be fun.
Well, way back in 1998, you wrote a piece for the Washington City paper about the sad state of newspaper comic sections.
I did.
At the time, you were still drawing a weekly strip for Roll Call.
Mm-hmm.
Any regrets about not pursuing cartooning full time?
I mean, it's like one of these things. When I was in my 20s, I wanted to be a full-time cartoonist and novelist and screenwriter. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I also liked, and then I kind of stumbled into nonfiction writing, into freelance reporting. And then the freelance reporting is what worked. And I did a comic strip for Roll Call every week until 2003, until I started at ABC News. And then they said I had to drop it because it was, about politics.
Right.
And then, I mean, look, it's a lot of fun to cartoon. It's a very tough existence. It's very tough to make it. It was a lot easier for me to make it as a journalist than as a cartoonist. Now, that might be because my skill set is actually better as a journalist than as a cartoonist.
Well, there are fewer jobs for cartoonists and fewer still there used to be. So no, I think you made the right choice probably, but
I do miss it though. Yeah, of course. I do miss cartooning.
Oh, you thought about a graphic novel? I
have actually, but that is so much work.
That's a lot of drawing.
Oh, and honestly, and I read a ton of, I have literally just sitting here, I have graphic novels that, because I'm an avid consumer of graphic novels, and they're so good and they're so artistic. I haven't taken an art class since 1991. So I just don't think it would be good. That's really honestly what's holding me back, is because the workload ultimately, that doesn't bother me. I could see myself, if I thought I could do it, having a 5 or 10 year project doing a graphic novel, if I thought I could do it well. But I just don't. I look at the graphic novelists out there, the ones who I read. Honestly, believe me, I'm doing a benefit for you by not showing you how cluttered my study actually is. But I'm looking at boxes and boxes of graphic novels and comics over there, and they're so talented. I just couldn't do it. My skills are not there.
Your Wikipedia entry under personal life is only 3 sentences long.
That's good.
2 are about your family.
Yeah.
Third is Tapper is a lifelong fan of the Philadelphia Phillies, Philadelphia Flyers, Philadelphia Eagles, and Philadelphia 76ers. And I just want to know, did they get those teams in the proper order for you?
No. I don't know who writes these things. I'm happy for it, honestly. And I like the Flyers, theoretically. I've never been that big a hockey fan because I just can't follow the puck. I was really excited during that short period where they let you there was like a laser thing that you could follow the puck, and then they stopped it, and like my eyes aren't that quick. My best friend growing up, Jason Lerner, was like the biggest Bobby Clark fan known to man. So I appreciate the love that people have for the Broad Street Bullies, but no, they would have to be listed last. Just not because I don't love them, but just because I can't follow the sport. No, it's probably like an Eagles-Phillies tie, followed by Sixers, followed by the Flyers. But it's very, I'm very capricious about it. Like last night, I was more of a Sixers fan, even though they lost. You know, maybe it's a three-way tie at the top. I haven't followed the Sixers as much just because there's so many. It's easier to be a football fan because there's so fewer games.
Well, seriously, our sports department found out I was talking to you and wanted me to ask you a couple of questions. And
okay, they know more about sports than I do.
Well, I mean, I told them, don't expect me to understand the answer. What's your prediction on the Sixers? Can they win it all this year? And after Sunday's game, you might have changed your mind about that. I don't know.
I mean, sure they can. Yeah, I mean, I think they can. I think it's a very exciting team. Yeah, why don't I just leave it at that? I mean, I think, I think what was demoralizing to me watching earlier this season was watching the Sixers play the Warriors. And my brother moved out to San Francisco, where he lives with his wife and daughter and son. And they are huge Golden State Warriors fans, huge. And I mean, Steph Curry is just amazing. And while I'm a huge fan of the Sixers and Joel Embiid and all the rest, that was kind of depressing because it's like it's like watching, I don't know. He's just so good.
Well, how about the Eagles and the Phillies? Feeling optimistic about their next move?
I mean, the Phillies are under 500 right now, so they'll have to get over 500 for me to feel a little bit more optimistic. I mean, I love them so much, but they're under 500, so I'm not tremendously optimistic. It's tough asking a Philadelphia fan if they're optimistic because it's like it is not in our nature to be optimistic. I mean, I actually went to the Super Bowl where the Eagles won, and like I was terrified. Well, probably everybody was. I was terrified until it was over. I mean, I was convinced Brady was going to score on that last run. So, I mean, no, I'm not confident that the Phillies are going to take it all, but they could. I mean, look, they their last World Series season, they didn't start out great either. But no, I mean, at this point, they should be better than 500. And Eagles, we'll see. I mean, as an Eagle fan, it is weird to look at the team and see how few players were on the Super Bowl winning team that are still on the team. The coach, we don't have either of the quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't have Malcolm Jenkins. I don't know if we're going to have Zach Ertz. I mean, so it's very kind of depressing to see, to see that so many of the players I love just not there anymore.
Yeah, and I think people felt emotional when your team wins a Super Bowl, you feel emotionally about the individuals who were there.
Yeah,
too, and it's hard to.
How do we not have either of those quarterbacks? I mean, that's all. That's my only question. Like, I personally would have stuck with Foles, but that said, like, how do we have neither of them? Anyway.
Yeah. Well, what's it like to be a Phillies sports fan living in Washington? Are there divided loyalties within your immediate family? Or
no? Well, yes, of course. I'm the only Phillies fan in my family. My wife is from St. Joseph, Missouri, so she roots for Kansas City teams. Oh. And my kids, they're not really sports fans per se. But when I take them to a Phillies Nats game, my son just says he's rooting for the winner. He doesn't care. So I'm trying to instill in them a Philly pride, but I don't think it works that way. I don't think it's not a transitive property per se. And as for what's it like to be a Phillies fan or a Philadelphia fan in DC, I mean, it's, there's like a small group of us there's an email chain with a few people in journalism and politics completely free of anything other than conversations about Philadelphia sports and also Wawa. And we're on this and we talk, and it's there's no politics allowed. Nobody talks about anything other than Philadelphia sports, and that's great. And the email chain has been going on so long, and nobody has replaced the subject line, so it's just like just like in the hundreds by now. But it's kind of lonely, right? You seek out fellow Philadelphia fans.
Well, Wawa, were you a Mayor of Easttown fan, or have you seen it?
Oh
yet?
my God, I loved it. I loved it. I just love hearing that Philly accent. I just love it so much. I mean, I think I said something on air about how the First Lady's Willow Grove accent was like a melody in my ear. I mean, you have to be a Philadelphian to understand why anyone who says hoagie, why that sounds good, but it just does. I don't know why.
I just found it remarkable that many people would want to learn an accent that anybody 25 miles outside the city would not recognize.
It's not even like an accent that that everybody in Philadelphia has, right?
No, it's very specifically, it's a Delco accent, which is
or
weird, its own thing, you know.
Yeah,
Delaware County and Chester County.
Other part like Northeast, you have it. Overbrook, you know, but like I didn't hear it. I don't remember hearing it anyway. Maybe I just didn't notice it, but like I don't remember hearing it growing up in Queen Village. And then my dad moved out to the suburbs to Marion when I was 10, and we did joint custody between him and my mom. And I don't remember it being out there. It's to me that Mayor of Easttown accent always kind of conveyed like working class roots. That's kind of always what I thought. But
I think it's Delaware County has a somewhat distinct. South Philly has its own distinct one, and I heard some of the South Philly and our end of Queen Village, which at the time was like the poor end of Queen Village.
Right. Yes, that's right. Right. No, it certainly was when I was growing up there. Yeah. But I loved Mayor of Easttown. And like somebody asked me about it, somebody who did not like it, a friend of mine asked me, he said he hated it. And I said, I loved it, but I'm biased. Just like I can't judge anything from Philadelphia that is authentic. I can't judge it negatively. Right. I mean, like if they're actually making the effort for the Rolling Rocks and the Hoagies and I thought all the accents were great. I loved it. I mean, I even loved it when Saturday Night Live made fun of it.
Oh, that was great.
Murder. Yeah.
Yes. So we have some questions from readers or some people who had submitted them earlier. Do you spend much time in Philly, and what are your favorite places to visit when you do?
I haven't in a while because of the pandemic, although my folks still live there. My dad still lives in Marion, and my mom still lives in Queen Village. I haven't been there in a while, but some of the places I like to go to when I'm there, other than obviously visiting my parents, I like going to the Melrose Diner. And if I can go to a Phillies or Eagles game, I will. Although those aren't the stadiums I went to growing up. So what else? Is Famous Deli still there? It was there when I was there last time. Jaime's and Murray's on the main line. I love seeing Boathouse Row. I love walking around Old Town. Or is it called Old City? Old City. Sorry, Old Town's in Virginia. See, that's a big gaffe. Old City. I love getting a soft pretzel from a vendor.
Yeah, I wonder when that'll happen again.
I know. Do they even sell them anymore?
It's kind of hard to imagine us just eating street food again, but I'm sure we'll get to it.
I love Tony Luke's or Gino's or Jim's or Abner's. I mean, I'll go anywhere really. Like there aren't cheesesteak places here in Philly here in DC that are any good.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing, and they have no appreciation for the importance of the roll. None. There used to be a great pizza place when I was growing up called Franco's on South Street. It's not there anymore. But Lorenzo's is fine if it's still there. I don't know if it is. So those are some of the places I like going.
Somebody wants to know if you're going to be coming to Philly for a live book signing. Are you not doing live at this point?
I haven't done any live book signings. They just haven't had them. I pop into a bookstore and sign books like unannounced, and when the stores ask me to do it, but it's not like an event.
Right.
So there is. I mean, I think that they're just the insurance for insurance purposes. They're not having them yet.
Yeah.
Which is too bad. But I totally would. I did one for the Hellfire Club at the Free Library, which was great, which I loved. And, if there are any Philly bookstore owners or people that want me to come and do this except live, and it's insured and it's safe, I'd be glad to do it. Give me an excuse to go up to Philly.
Maybe they can do it outside.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. There's so much that can be done safely outside, and I don't know if it's because of legal reasons or people are just still scared because of the pandemic.
I've talked to a lot of authors in the last year, and I sense that just starting to get back to live events.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'd love to do it.
What character would you like to be if you had a chance to act in the movie based on your last book?
I mean, I'm not an actor, so I don't know. I mean, the characters that I identify with the most are Charlie and Margaret. I don't look at the roles and think, well, I mean, I don't think I'd be good at any of them. But I have some actor friends that I think would be fantastic at them. And when
you should play Charlie.
Well, it's different, right? Because the Hellfire Club, he's 32,
right?
Or 33, and in The Devil May Dance, he's 41. So it's different. I mean, if I had my pick, I think Jake Gyllenhaal, who just turned 40, would be a great Charlie. He'd have to demuscular himself. I don't think of Charlie as that cut, that shredded.
I don't think anybody in that age, except
he'd have to be a little bit more meek, more in the Donnie Darko vein. But I think Jake Gyllenhaal would be a great Charlie, kind of that sense of kind of like naivete, and also he's able to convey a sense of like weakness, and also but fundamentally a good person. For the younger Charlie, for the Hellfire Club, I mean, I don't, we're actually trying to cast it at some point, so I don't want to like limit myself, but like somebody that I think would be really good is this young actor named Logan Lerman, who's he's in his late 20s. He was in.
Ever watched Jack and Bobby?
Was he in that?
Yeah, there was I
remember that.
A WB show where.
Yeah, I never watched it. Was he in that?
I believe so. Yeah, I think he was.
I saw him on an Amazon Prime show called Hunters, and I thought he was really good and very appealing, and he kind of has the Charlie qualities too. And then in terms of Margaret, I mean, anybody could do that, really. Like so many great, strong women in Hollywood, but like Kirsten Dunst or Jessica Chastain, or I mean, there are a million. But look, the one thing I know about taking a written work and making it a film or a TV show, the one thing I've learned from the Outpost experience is you're lucky if you get anything made at all. So I'll be
a pretty good cast for that. That was. Wasn't Orlando Bloom in there?
Orlando Bloom played Ben Keating, and Scott Eastwood played Clint Romachet, and Caleb Landry Jones played Ty Carter. Yeah, we were really lucky. We had amazing actors. But again, that was luck. So much in Hollywood takes forever. It's so not our worlds, Ellen, because you and I are, we're deadline journalists where we're like, we have to do, it doesn't matter if I'm ready to do my show at 4:00 today, I'm doing it. Right?
But journalism's great for procrastinators because
you have to do it. It forces you to do it,
whether you want to do it or not.
Well, Hollywood is enabling for procrastinators because everything takes forever. And just setting up meetings it's nuts. So anyway, I'd just be lucky if they made it into a quality streaming show. I would love it. And I think it would be a lot of fun for people. I mean, like one person I think would be really good is, Stephen Root, the actor Stephen Root. He's in Barry. He was in News Radio. He was in Office Space. He's just some. I would love to cast him as Joe McCarthy in the Hellfire Club. I think he would be electric. I think he would be so good at that.
I think you might like him too much, though. If he was.
Well, that's the point you want to get across. I mean, that was the challenge as a writer writing about Sinatra or Joe McCarthy is you don't want to caricature them as like, as like for Joe McCarthy, you don't want him to be like this, like, cartoon villain. Like I tried to convey how charismatic he was and how much people.
I think you really gave him a lot of substance. And I know a lot of the words you put in his mouth had come. Yeah. Things he'd actually said. But somebody's asking, have you given any thought to the idea of Frank Sinatra making a return in future books?
Oh, that's funny.
He did become a Republican campaigner for Reagan.
Yeah, that's funny. I haven't. And I tried to do something like that in The Devil May Dance because President Eisenhower was a big character, not a major character, but an important character in the Hellfire Club. And like he shows up and has a major scene with Charlie at the end of the Hellfire Club. That doesn't spoil anything, by the way. I wrote an entire chapter of Charlie and Eisenhower reuniting for The Devil May Dance because it turned out Eisenhower actually had a house in Palm Springs right near Sinatra's, so it made sense. And I wrote this very detailed chapter that described accurately what Eisenhower's house looked like and what he was going through and what his wife was going through and everything like that. And at the end of the day, I threw it out because there was no reason for it. There was one bit of plot development at the end of it, and it just dragged. It just dragged the book. And so I just took that plot point, put it somewhere else, and I scrapped the chapter. So I'd be wary of writing a chapter or writing scenes just to have Sinatra show up for the fun of it, because I feel like maybe I would end up with another Eisenhower chapter that I end up throwing out. Do
you do that a lot? I mean, are you good at editing yourself, you think?
No, I don't. I'm getting better. I think that The Devil May Dance is tighter than the Hellfire Club. And I do, and this is something I recommend to all writers, I show it to a lot of people and get their feedback and say, please don't hold back. Please let me know what you think. And get a lot of feedback from a lot of people. But no, I don't. I mean, like, I'll read a novella by one of my favorite writers is Nick Hornby. And he writes these like little books now, like small, short, and they're so good. He's such a beautiful writer. And I just read it with envy. There's so much in there. No, he's not writing one of them was a historical novel. I forget what it was called. Funny Girl, maybe. It was called Funny Girl. And it was a historical novel about a sitcom star in the UK in the 50s or 60s. And it was just so well done. Anyway, no, I don't. I don't think I'm a good editor, and I need more editing.
Well, I think we all need editing, but what's the appeal for you of historical fiction? I mean, you're younger even than the members of the Brat Pack, much less the Rat Pack. How does a Gen Xer become interested in Frank Sinatra, for instance?
Well, I loved Frank Sinatra's music growing up. I mean, and there's definitely something about growing up in the 70s, which was just really not a fun decade by the time I was aware of what was going on. The hostage crisis and gas lines and unemployment and malaise, and that I was definitely a victim to boomer nostalgia for the 50s and 60s. I mean, it was, I was in the same way I was a victim of boomers jamming Motown down my throat, which is great. Don't get me wrong.
So sorry.
Don't get me wrong. I love Motown. But, when at some point you realize as a member of a generation how much the previous generation influenced you because of their nostalgia, not for yours, but for theirs. And so I think that I was like, I kind of bought into the romanticism of the 50s and 60s, and I wanted to explore it. And I thought it would be fun. I think those characters are fun. Eisenhower, McCarthy. I mean, McCarthy's evil, obviously, but Eisenhower and the Rat Pack, like it's very romantic and cool. And in terms of 1962, I mean, the number of iconic actors and films from just that like year or two is unbelievable. I mean, in the book, and this is all from 1962, Lolita, The Manchurian Candidate, The Birds, they just, Psycho was a couple years before. The stars of that time are still very well known today. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, you had a really good range of movies for that, because part of it is set at the Academy Awards that year.
Yeah.
And there have been years for the Oscars where I don't know that anybody wants to remember.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it made sense to have a scene at the Academy Awards because this is the film industry, and and again, it's supposed to be fun, the novel. It's supposed to be, I mean, there are serious themes in it, but it's supposed to be enjoyable. And I'm not the kind of writer that would write successfully about there are amazing literary writers who could write about like a dinner table conversation, and it would be just beautiful and fascinating and gut-wrenching. But I don't, that's not me. I'm more of a plot guy, a plot and scene person. And I just thought it would be fun to have something take place there. But yeah, the movies, I mean, West Side Story, swept the Academy Awards that year. We all know West Side Story. There are different years that the movie that won, like, Judgment at Nuremberg was up that year. It didn't win Best Picture, but there was just a lot of relatable entertainment and in that period, which was lucky.
We've talked about this before, your 15-minute a day writing habit.
Yeah.
And because
a minimum of 15 minutes. Yeah.
I know that, but the main question most people have is, how the hell does he write books on top of everything else? Yeah. Somebody is asking, if I heard you mention you try to write every day, even if it's just for 15 minutes. If it came to writing or watching an Eagles playoff game and you could only do one, what would you do?
I'd watch the Eagle playoff game, but I mean, like, Eagle playoffs game do not last 24 hours. So I'm capable of doing both. And that doesn't mean I have, that's funny. Why are these people trying to trap me? You can't get me with your gotcha question.
Right, but that's Philly for you. They're always going to try.
I would do the Eagle playoff game. I would take a day. I would take a day if I needed to. That's okay. There are extenuating circumstances if the Eagles make the playoff. Well,
I'm afraid that's all the time we have, and Jake has. I want to thank Jake Tapper and all of you for joining us for Inquirer Live to talk about The Devil May Dance. Thanks.
Ellen, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. And Philadelphia Inquirer, great newspaper. I love it. We used to get the bulletin, and then my dad got up one morning when my job was Sunday morning, going to the corner of 2nd and Christian and getting the paper. But my dad got up, got the Inquirer, and I was so mad. Got the bulletin, which is our paper at the time, and I was so mad. I went and I bought the Inquirer, the Sunday Inquirer, brought it home, and then we became Inquirer readers because it was such a great paper. And that's how we became loyal Philadelphia Inquirer readers. And I subscribe, as I hope everybody watching is subscribing to the Philadelphia Inquirer. Local journalism is very important and needs your support.
Well, thank you.